You know, think back to when you were in middle school.
Oh boy.
Right, like when the pressure of just existing as a teenager got to be, well, too much. What did you do?
I mean, you probably found some sort of escape hatch for it.
Exactly. Maybe you threw yourself into a massive multiplayer video game or, I don't know, marathon read a fantasy series.
Or maybe you just stared at your phone for hours just to tune out the noise.
Yeah, we all consume other people's worlds to escape our own. It's natural.
It is. It's a totally universal survival mechanism. We look for a temporary exit from reality.
So more safe.
Right, a place where the rules make sense, or at least, where the chaos isn't our own personal responsibility.
But every so often, you find someone who decides that simply consuming a fictional world isn't enough. Like it doesn't process what they're going through
So they have to build one.
from absolute scratch. Which brings us to today. We are taking you on a deep dive into an absolute behemoth of a source document. It's called the Marshwood Lore Book.
And honestly, calling it a behemoth feels like an understatement.
It really does.
What we are looking at here is a sprawling, deeply intricate, politically and socially complex urban universe.
It's basically a fictional city that mirrors some of the heaviest, most intractable socioeconomic issues of our actual world.
Yeah, and our mission today is to unpack a really fascinating evolution. We're going to look at how a simple AI roleplay project snowballed into this massive, functioning, fictional ecosystem.
Complete with cartel wars, corrupt politicians, deeply mapped generational trauma. I mean, family trees that would rival a Russian novel.
Oh, easily. And the craziest part for you listening, this entire universe was masterminded by a single person.
Just one guy.
Yep, a college student named Jordin, who started writing all of this just to deal with the stress of his own childhood.
It's wild. I'm looking at the notes you compiled on his background, and it seems like he was pulling from like a very specific intersection of cultures. So who's the architect here?
So Jordin is a young creator with a really fascinating vantage point. He is Latino and Asian American. His mother is Filipino and his father is Latino. And he grew up in a strict conservative household in Beverly Hills.
That is a very specific environment to navigate as a kid.
Totally. When you are navigating complex multicultural identities within a rigid environment like that, pop culture often becomes your primary outlet for expression.
Makes sense?
For Jordin, that outlet was survival horror. He got deeply invested in franchises like Resident Evil and The Walking Dead.
Okay, so he's steeped in these high-stakes apocalyptic narratives. But how does he get from watching zombies to, like, building a functioning city economy?
Right, the mechanics of it.
Yeah, because I see references in the source text to platforms called Amino and Character AI. Can you explain what those are? Because I think a lot of people just picture a kid typing away in a Microsoft Word document.
Oh, yeah, no, that is a crucial distinction to make. The mechanics of creation here are entirely different from traditional novel writing.
How so?
Well, Amino is essentially a network of community-run social apps. They're heavily focused on fandoms, where users engage in text-based role-playing.
So you pretend to be a character and write collaborative stories with strangers.
Exactly. But the real leap, the thing that changes everything, happens with Character AI.
Which is what, exactly?
Character AI uses large language models, highly advanced artificial intelligence to simulate personas.
Oh, I see.
Instead of writing a story alone, Jordin could program an AI to act as a specific character, define its personality parameters, and then simply talk to it.
So the AI holds the context of the conversation and generates dynamic, unscripted responses.
Precisely.
That is wow. It's like playing an incredibly advanced game of SimCity, but mashed up with Dungeons and Dragons.
That's a great way to put it.
Right, because instead of just dropping a hospital or a police station onto a map, you're acting as the dungeon master. You're conversing with your digital citizens, and the AI is actively helping you flesh out their, like, multi-generational, culturally rich backstories in real time.
Exactly. It turns world building from a solitary, intimidating blank page into this iterative, collaborative dialogue.
You bounce an idea off the machine.
The machine throws an unexpected reaction back, and suddenly, boom, you have a new piece of canon lore.
That is so cool. And the canon Jordin built starts with a deeply idealistic foundation, right? Because if we were going to understand the absolute chaos of Marshwood City in its present day, we first have to look at the utopia it was meant to be.
We do. Let's look at the timeline. Marshwood is a fictional city placed in Northern California.
Somewhere between Stockton and Sacramento, according to the lore.
Right. And the lore states it was founded in 1867.
So, shortly after the abolition of slavery.
Yes. It was established by two black Americans named Judith and Jacobson. They found unclaimed land, built a homestead, and started farming.
And I imagine word spread.
It did. It naturally attracted other black Americans who were fleeing the systemic violence of the post-war South, looking for a sanctuary. By 1872, this settlement had the highest concentration of black residents in Northern California.
But the state of California, driven by the racial prejudices of the time, refused to officially recognize Marshwood as a city.
Exactly. Meanwhile, the neighboring town, Leakton Hills, which was predominantly white and wealthy, got official recognition without a second thought.
I find it really interesting how Jordin weaves real-world historical migration patterns into this. I mean, it's not just a fantasy land. It is grounded in how California actually populated.
It is incredibly grounded. During the California Gold Rush era in the lore, Marshwood opens its doors to Filipino, Chinese, Korean, and Japanese contract workers.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they integrate into the community and build prosperous businesses alongside the black founders.
Yeah.
You also have rural Caucasian farmers,
Who the lore specifically describes as conservative Republicans holding traditional values. Right?
Yes, and they supply the city with its crops. So it operates as this thriving, self-sustaining, deeply diverse utopia.
A beautiful picture.
Oh.
But narratives require friction. A story about a perfectly functioning utopia gets boring really fast.
Very fast.
Looking at the timeline, this peaceful coexistence hits a massive brick wall in 1975. What actually breaks the system here?
Economics and a very heavy dose of political polarization. In 1975, a massive economic shift hits Marshwood.
Like a recession.
Worse. Inflation skyrockets, businesses file for bankruptcy, and unemployment absolutely devastates the marginalized groups, as well as those rural Caucasian farmers.
Okay, but this is where the lore introduces some extremely specific real-world political framing to explain the fallout.
It does.
And I actually have to stop and push back on this for a second because reading through the source documents, it feels like a very jarring shift in tone.
It's definitely noticeable.
Right. The text explicitly asserts that the Democratic Party introduced government welfare assistance during this crash and claims this directly led to a sharp decline in marriage rates.
Because mothers allegedly refused marriage to keep their government benefits.
Exactly. Which the lore says created fatherless homes and directly caused a massive spike in gang violence. Meanwhile, it credits the Republican Party with stepping in, securing official city recognition for Marshwood, and preserving traditional values.
It is a very stark framing.
It's beyond stark. It reads like a highly polarized political manifesto. I mean, how are we supposed to engage with a text that is so heavily and frankly awkwardly biased? Are we just supposed to accept that as the reality of the universe?
I am really glad you brought that up because impartiality is vital when analyzing this kind of text.
Right.
We need to make it very clear to you listening. We are absolutely not validating this as real-world political science or sociology. We are not endorsing these viewpoints in any way.
Right. We're just looking at the text.
Exactly. What we have to do is look at this purely as a mechanical device within a teenager's fictional universe.
Okay, so what is the mechanical purpose of using such extreme political binaries? Because it feels like a lot.
Well, Jordin needed a catalyst to break his universe. When young writers are trying to establish massive societal stakes, they often reach for the most recognizable real-world conflicts they see around them.
Things they absorb through news headlines or dinner table conversations.
Yes, and then they amplify them to the extreme. Narratively, Jordin is creating a pressure cooker. He needs the social contract to fail in a way that feels systemic and deeply personal.
To force his characters into desperate survival modes.
Exactly. By creating this intense political divide, he establishes a world where citizens feel they either have to rely on a government system they fundamentally distrust, or they have to take the law into their own hands.
Ah, I see. It is a structural tool. You fracture the society so the characters have a legitimate excuse to operate outside the law.
Right.
Because when the government and the economy fail to provide a safety net, alternative power structures are going to rise up to fill that vacuum.
Exactly. Nature abhors a vacuum. And in Marshwood, that vacuum is filled by the mafias.
Let's look at who actually steps into that power void. The oldest faction in the lore is the Black Mafia.
Yes.
According to the notes, it was founded by a man named Kirk Andrews, specifically to restore order in the black community after that 1975 crash.
Right. Kirk Andrews fundamentally rejected the idea of relying on government handouts. He wanted absolute self-determination.
And if we fast forward to the present day in the lore, the organization is run by his great-grandson.
Yeah, 34-year-old Keith Andrews.
Keith is an incredibly compelling character. He lives in the affluent, safer north side, but he controls the volatile east side.
And their logo is a black crow, which the lore says symbolizes intelligence and transparency.
And here's the detail that really fascinated me. The Black Mafia strictly prohibits drug smuggling.
It is a vital distinction. Their core mission is community protection and self-reliance, not exploitation.
So they operate almost like a heavily armed, extreme neighborhood watch?
Basically.
But you can't have a mob boss without a rival, which brings us to the Latin Mafia, led by 32-year-old Giovanni Andreas. And Giovanni's backstory, let me make sure I'm reading this correctly.
Go ahead.
He grows up in Mexico, a sweet kid who loves helping people. At age 14, he is at a farmer's market helping load a cart with watermelons. The cart rolls away, he falls in, gets trapped, and is accidentally transported across the U.S. border.
That is the canonical origin story, yes.
We were just talking about a grounded historical realism a minute ago. That sounds completely absurd. A kid falls into a watermelon cart and eventually becomes a cartel boss.
I know it sounds absurd.
How does the lore try to make something that melodramatic believable?
Well, it doesn't necessarily aim for logistical realism, it aims for emotional realism.
Emotional realism.
Yeah, this is a classic Dickensian trope dialed up to 11. Think about the mechanics of teenage storytelling again. Jordin is processing themes of alienation, vulnerability, and the loss of innocence.
So to justify Giovanni's eventual transformation into a ruthless, violent cartel leader, the narrative subjects him to the most extreme, unfair victimization possible.
Precisely. The trauma has to be massive to justify the retaliation. The universe has to punish him for being innocent.
Right.
Once he accidentally ends up in Texas, completely alone and unable to speak the language, he faces severe labor exploitation.
Employers refuse to pay him, threatening him with ICE deportation if he speaks up.
Yes. He eventually makes his way to California, falls in love, and has a premature baby named Lucas.
And when Giovanni begs his boss for a raise just to pay the hospital bills, his boss laughs in his face.
And that is the breaking point. The system entirely rejects his humanity, so he snaps.
He violently beats his boss, realizes that playing by the rules is going to get his family killed, and rallies other undocumented workers to start a massive strike.
And that workers' strike eventually morphs into the Latin Mafia.
But to fund their survival, Giovanni starts smuggling narcotics, which puts him in direct, violent opposition to Keith Andrews.
It is a tragic collision course. Both Keith and Giovanni are fundamentally driven by the same desire to protect their marginalized people from systemic failure.
But their divergent methods, Keith's strict isolationist self-reliance versus Giovanni's illicit exploit-the-system survival, make their war inevitable.
Completely inevitable. And they aren't the only players on the board. The lore outlines the Korean Mafia, led by Chu Lee, operating out of Korean BBQ fronts to make ends meet.
You also have the White Tigers, run by Garrett Harvey, and he is fascinating because he isn't a street thug. He's the CEO of Marshwood's largest tech corporation, playing both political sides from the shadows to maintain his wealth.
It is a brilliantly constructed powder keg. But the true tragedy of Marshwood isn't the adults fighting over territory.
No, it's the trickle-down effect.
Exactly. The actions of these mob bosses and corrupt politicians create an environment that actively suffocates the next generation.
Yeah, let's talk about the youth of Marshwood, because they are clearly the emotional core of this entire project. While the adults are playing chess, the kids are drowning.
They really are.
I want to look at the current mayor of Marshwood, Blake Pitch.
Oh, Blake Pitch represents the absolute rot of institutional power in the city. He is the first Republican mayor of Marshwood, hailing from the massive wealth of Leakton Hills.
He is a man defined by public scandals and a desperate need to control his image, and his priorities are just wildly absurd.
They are.
The lore details how the mayor uses city funds to build luxury dog parks, specifically for his purebred golden retriever, King IV.
Who, by the way, supposedly plays Beethoven on the piano at dog shows.
Which is just a great detail. Meanwhile, the mayor is weaponizing IC agents to crack down on Giovanni's Latin Mafia. But the real tragedy is his own home life. His 16-year-old biological son, Bradley, is completely neglected.
Bradley is the star high school quarterback, but he is struggling with severe, debilitating alcoholism. His father essentially ignores him, focusing entirely on his new wife, their new twins, and of course the piano-playing dog.
It is such a stark illustration of misallocated resources, both politically and emotionally. But the interweaving of these families goes much deeper. Let's look at Giovanni's son, Lucas.
Lucas Andreas is a beautifully rendered character. He is 13 years old, and the lore specifies that he has level 1 autism.
Can you clarify what that means in the context of this story for listeners who might not be familiar with the diagnostic terms?
Certainly. Level 1 autism generally means an individual is highly functional but requires some support. They might struggle with interpreting subtle social cues, experience sensory sensitivities, or have very specific, intense interests.
But they're still navigating mainstream environments like a typical middle school.
Exactly. And what makes this so compelling is that Jordin based Lucas's personality development deeply on his own real-life godson.
Oh, wow. That adds such a layer of tenderness to the world building.
It really does.
So you have Lucas, a sensitive kid who loves singing R&B and playing baseball, dropped right into the center of a brutal cartel war run by his father.
And to complicate things further, Lucas is secretly dating a 17-year-old former hoodlum named Reggie Anderson.
Reggie is a walking contradiction, which makes him incredibly realistic. He spent 3 years in juvenile detention for a botched robbery.
Right, so he projects this hard, untouchable exterior. But underneath, he is a closeted, nerdy kid who is obsessed with Star Trek and marine biology.
And the reason Reggie wears that armor, his father, Khalil Anderson. Looking at these source documents, Khalil seems to be the dark connective tissue running through the entire city.
Khalil is the shadow over Marshwood. He is an abusive ex-con, a former high school football star whose dreams were shattered by a torn ACL.
Unable to process his own failure, he channels his immense rage into physically and emotionally abusing Reggie.
But his violence isn't just contained to his home. Back when they were all teenagers, Khalil ruthlessly bullied Chuli.
Who, as we mentioned, grows up to become the boss of the Korean mafia.
Right. And later on, Khalil spent years terrorizing and extorting Giovanni Andreas before the Latin mafia actually gained its formidable power.
Khalil's unresolved anger essentially forged the monsters that currently tear the city apart. The adults in Marshwood are entirely trapped in a web of past grievances, and it is the children who are forced to pay the toll.
That theme of paying the toll is everywhere.
I see notes here about a character named Quincy Brown. He's a soft-hearted NICU nurse with severe abandonment issues, trapped in a physically abusive relationship. But he ends up adopting an abandoned baby named Harley right out of the hospital ward simply because the other nurses were ignoring her.
And then you have 9-year-old Tyshawn Connell.
Oh, Tayshawn's arc is devastating.
It really is. Born in a gas station bathroom to a runaway teen mother, he gets swallowed by the foster system. He is placed with severely abusive foster parents who literally try to force a different identity on him.
Making him wear dresses and calling him by a different name.
Yes.
So this 9-year-old boy is just constantly running away, sleeping on park benches in a city run by cartels just to escape the people who are supposed to be caring for him.
Until he is finally found and protected by Keith Andrews.
The boss of the Black Mafia. A ruthless mob boss becomes the only safe, stabilizing father figure this child has ever known.
It flips the concept of morality completely on its head.
It really does. So I have to ask, as someone analyzing the psychological weight of this text, why is this world so hyper-focused on traumatized youth? Between Bradley's alcoholism, Reggie's abuse, Tayshawn running away, what is the engine driving this cycle of violence in the narrative?
Well, what Marshwood represents is a brilliant, agonizing microcosm of inherited trauma. The youth in this universe are not just characters.
What are they?
They are vessels carrying the physical and emotional debts of their parents' unresolved conflicts. You have Bradley drinking to numb his father's neglect, Reggie putting on a criminal persona to survive his father's fists, Lucas retreating inward because of his father's violent lifestyle.
It highlights the inescapable cost of the city's power struggles.
Exactly. The adults are fighting bloody wars to control Marshwood, claiming they're building a better future. But in the process of fighting that war, they are actively destroying the very generation they're supposedly fighting for.
That is incredibly heavy.
It is.
But it is also a profound observation on human nature. Which brings us back to you, the listener. You might be walking your dog or commuting to work right now, wondering why you should care about a college student's fictional universe. Why spend time unpacking the mafia politics and municipal failures of a city that doesn't actually exist on any map?
Right, what's the point?
Exactly. I think the answer is that Marshwood proves how world building is one of the most powerful psychological tools we have.
Absolutely. It serves as a complex mechanism to process real-world anxieties.
Yeah.
Jordan Yu didn't just write a story. He built a laboratory.
A controlled environment.
Yeah, to safely explore terrifying concepts like immigration policy, systemic economic failure, neurodivergence, domestic abuse, and extreme political polarization.
It showcases the deeply therapeutic, expansive power of creative writing. It allows the creator to take the chaotic, unsafe elements of the real world and place them into a system where they have ultimate authorial control.
It is a safe place to put the unsafe things.
And the fact that he used artificial intelligence to help construct that safe place feels like a massive shift in how we create art.
It is a total paradigm shift.
Yeah,
And that is actually the thought I want to leave you with today.
let's hear it.
Consider the evolution we just tracked. A single teenager, overwhelmed by the pressures of his environment, logs onto an AI roleplay platform. He uses large language models not to cheat on a homework assignment, but as collaborative scene partners to spark a universe that is breathtakingly detailed and emotionally complex.
It's amazing.
If this is what is possible now, what entirely new genres of collaborative human-AI storytelling are we about to see emerge in the next decade?
Wow.
Are we looking at a future where the next great literary epic, the next Tolkien or George R.R. Martin, doesn't start with a solitary genius staring at a typewriter, but with a kid chatting with a machine on their phone between classes?
The tools of creation are democratizing at an unprecedented rate, and Marshwood might just be the blueprint for how the next generation processes the world.